Hello class, and welcome to another lesson with Professor Choi. Today we're going to be doing the second video for my series of 5 things that are good financial advice for young adults. Again, this series is part of what I'm calling Simple Steps for a Better Future. I recommended on a previous video that young adults need to be doing these 5 things. They need to become money aware, they need to have or create a budget, they need to open a retirement account, they need to avoid recurrent high interest debt, and they need to finish college or become an entrepreneur. Today, we're going to be explaining the second one on how to have or create a budget. Alright, so how do I create a budget? Budgets you have to write down. You cannot just sit and kind of ponder about your expenses, because if you don't visualize your expenses, it's very difficult to know what to do about them. So you have to take your time and sit down and write it down. So create categories and use some kind of software to do this. Now the easiest way to start a budget, by the way, is just to grab pencil and a sheet of paper and then literally write it down and start thinking about your expenses. You could do it weekly. I recommend monthly because it just takes too long if you got to do it weekly. There are 52 weeks in a year, but there are only 12 months. So, if you look at it monthly, it's kind of like the easiest way to keep track of, and then you can look at your budget basically once a month or once every couple of months. So per month usually works good enough. All right, so start creating large categories in your budget sheet. So start your budget sheet and create a large category. Then break it down into subsequent smaller categories so you can keep track of those expenses. For example, let's say I put house on my large category, then there's a bunch of stuff that I can fit into house expenses, like rent, or electricity, or water, or maintenance. All of those payments that you normally make, you need to throw in there. Alright, let's say you have a car. Well, you can separate the expenses that you have on your car. If you have a car payment, you put the car payment. But every time you have a car, you need to have car insurance. So now, put the insurance there. Every time you have a car, there's going to be things that break with the car, plus you have to maintain it. Oil changes every, depending on the manufacturer, every 5 to 10,000 miles. You got to write that down and think about that as well. When it's my next oil change, and how do I expense for that? Alright, personal expenses. So again, create a large category for personal expenses. Then after that, put the different categories on where you spend your money. Maybe you spend money on food. Maybe you spend money on clothing. Maybe you spend money on electronics. Maybe you spend money on video games. Maybe you spend money on, I don't know, a Netflix subscription. Or maybe you want to put the Netflix subscription right here on the house and put, I don't know, TV as a category for the house. Okay? So create large categories for your expenses, then smaller categories in each one of those, and then start finding the numbers for those. Now, let's say that right now you have no idea about your budget. How do you know what you're spending? Well, today is the best day to get that started. If you spend money cash, it's very difficult to figure out where you're spending your money because you're not keeping track of it. So you need to start keeping track of it. How do we do that? Every time you spend, write down where you spend somewhere. Now, where is that somewhere? Okay, so I like to use Microsoft Excel because I think that everybody should learn Excel anyways. So might as well pick it up on your budget. Now, if you don't want to use Microsoft Excel, that's fine. There is plenty of software out there. I'm pretty sure there are apps that you could use to help you track your budget. So pull up your phone right now and look for an app to help you with your budget. I'm pretty sure one of the first things that they're going to do on those apps is talk about the categories that you want to put on your numbers. Okay? By the way, remember when you're using apps, especially if they're free, the way they make money is by selling your information. So be mindful of what type of information you give to some of these apps, because we don't know who manages them most of the time and what are they doing with your information behind the scenes. So just be mindful. Okay? So one of the things that you need to be doing is you need to be looking at this budget every month, especially at the beginning, because we don't spend exactly the same amount all the time. I mean, some months you may have gone on vacation and that's not really something that you do every month. Some month maybe you didn't do much at all, and then now all of a sudden your budget looks really small. So you need to figure out a way to kind of normalize that over time. So instead of thinking about this is how much money I spent only on this month, I want you to think about you got to do this for a few months to get a good idea of how you're doing over time. Now once you know, for example, that you go on vacation say once a year, and let you say you spend every time you go on vacation, you spend a couple $1,000, then now you can take those $2,000 that you spent on vacation, divide it by 12, and that could be your kind of like monthly budget for vacation expenses. Okay? So look at your budget every month or every few months, and then keep tracking of that over time so you know how much you're spending and where it's going. This will help you a lot with my number one thing, which is what I said, become money aware. You need to know what money is coming in and what money is going out. Now once you have a budget, you need to now start looking at your income and then take away your budget to see how much your savings could be. So becoming money aware means you're going to keep track of your income. Then now we're going to have a budget to figure out our expenses. Income is usually a heck of a lot easier to figure out because your employer gives you a fixed amount of hours. And by the way, I'm saying this for most people, but of course if you're an entrepreneur, it might be really difficult to figure out. But in any case, your income is usually fairly steady, so you can basically try to figure out how much money you have pretty quickly. But then the budget is kind of something that's like in a lot of flux, so you need to look at this one more. If you do your income minus your expenses, this is your potential savings every month. One of the recommendations that I have, by the way, and I always tell this to everyone, is you need to pay yourself first. So I like to put on my budget some savings already. In other words, I feed my savings account regularly. In my case, my investment account, because I've already have my amount of money that I want to have on my savings account. So now I'm basically slowly feeding my investment account. So you need to, or at least I like to put savings in my budget, and then anything extra is extra savings. And I will be glad to keep it or spend it if I already have my savings. As I mentioned on a previous video, how much should you save? Well, if you're looking at the money for retirement, in order to be able to have a comfortable retirement, you need to save about 10% of your income per year. And then by the time you retire, with the money that you have saved, plus Social Security, you should be able to be okay. Hopefully, you also follow my third advice, which is to open a retirement account. Now you got money from your retirement account, and then you are good to go and in good shape for retirement. Okay? The next thing you need to do is you need to adjust the budget depending on the circumstances. Once you have become money aware, you know where the money is coming in, you know where the money is going out, and then now you can tweak that income and you can tweak those expenses. How? By changing them. Alright? If you cannot afford something, you shouldn't buy it. So you need to always keep track of that income and those expenses and then adjust the expenses to the situation. Okay? So if your income drops, we need to drop our expenses. If your income increases, you should not be increasing all of your expenses because you need to be saving more money. And you need to tweak that. So let's say, for example, you're going through a bad month, for example. Okay? So let's say income went down and expenses stay the same. Well, what's going to happen is this month you're going to have less savings than before. Well, that's okay, you know. You build your savings already, becoming money aware, and you already have some savings, so you use your savings to plug in the hole on that particular month. But bad months don't last forever. Eventually they go away. So when they go away, your income comes right back up. Your budget, let's assume they stay the same, then what's going to happen is now you got more savings and you put the money back on the savings account to replenish it for the next time. Alright? So the idea is that we tweak our income and our savings and our budget depending on the situation. But unless you are money aware, it is very difficult to do. Alright? Thank you for sticking with another lesson with Professor Choi, and I hope you have a wonderful future. Follow me again for the next video, how to open a retirement account and what they are. Have a good one.